For nearly 2 years, I convinced myself that sending $650 a month was just the price of being a good daughter. My parents called it a lifeline, but when I finally looked at the math, I realized I had poured almost $20,000 into a black hole while my sister drove a brand new luxury car. I asked for a single receipt, and my family didn't just get angry, they declared war. The notification on my phone screen was so routine it had become invisible. A small white rectangle appearing on the 3rd of every month at 9 in the morning. Transfer reminder, family support. It was a sterile name for something that felt like a bloodletting. I sat at my kitchen table, the laminate cold under my elbows, and opened my banking app. My checking account balance was healthy enough to survive. But only because I lived a life of rigorous subtraction. I did not buy coffee. I did not subscribe to streaming services unless I shared the password with 3 other people. I drove a sedan that was 10 years old and made a rattling sound whenever I accelerated past 50 miles per hour. I typed in the numbers. $650. I stared at the confirm button. It was a significant amount of money. It was half a rent payment in a decent part of town. It was a car payment on a very nice vehicle. For me, it was the price of keeping my parents in their home. Just for a little while. My father had said 2 years ago, just until I get back on my feet after the surgery. The surgery had been minor, a knee replacement that had healed within 6 months. My father was back at work, albeit part-time, and my mother was still working her administrative job at the county clerk's office. Yet the request for the money never stopped. It had morphed from an emergency infusion of cash into a fixed utility bill, as essential and unthanked as the electricity or the water. I pressed confirm. The screen flashed green. Success. My stomach did not feel successful. It felt heavy, weighed down by a specific, gnawing anxiety that I had learned to suppress during the workday. I was 32 years old. I was a senior logistics coordinator for a mid-sized shipping firm. My entire professional life was built on tracking things, on knowing exactly where a container was between Shanghai and Long Beach, on understanding the chain of custody. But in my personal life, I was sending $650 a month into a void, and I was not allowed to ask where it landed. I put the phone down and looked at the stack of mail on the counter. There was a reminder postcard from my dentist. I had a molar that reacted to cold water with a sharp, electric jolt, a signal that a filling had failed or a crack had formed. I had ignored it for 3 months. Dental work was expensive. I had done the math. If I needed a crown, it would cost roughly $1,200. That was 2 months of family support. I picked up the postcard and threw it in the recycling bin. I would just drink my water at room temperature. The guilt was a reflex. I felt guilty for even calculating the trade-off. They were my parents. They had raised me. They had fed me. The narrative in our family was strong and impenetrable. We help each other, but the definition of we was flexible, and the definition of help was becoming increasingly unilateral. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my sister. Lauren. Received. Thanks. That was it. No update on the mortgage balance. No screenshot of the payment confirmation yet. Just the acknowledgement that the transaction was complete. Lauren was 29, 3 years younger than me, but she occupied a space in the family dynamic that was effectively a generation apart. I was the old soul, the responsible one, the boring one. Lauren was the vibrant one, the one with potential, the one who needed just a little more runway to take off. I had provided a lot of runway over the last 24 months. I typed back, "Can you send the confirmation number from the lender? I need to track it." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, a message. "Portal is acting up again. We'll send when it loads. Don't stress so much. Alice, it's handled." I set the phone down, face down. It was always handled. And yet, the portal was always acting up. The screenshots I eventually received, usually days later, were blurry photos taken of a computer screen with a phone, or cropped so tightly that I could see the dollar amount and the word paid. But never the account number, the date, or the remaining principal balance. I stood up and rinsed my coffee mug. I had to get to work. I had a performance review coming up, and I was hoping for a raise. Not to buy a house of my own, or to travel, or to fix my tooth. I needed a raise because I was terrified that $650 was going to turn into $700, and I wanted to be ready when it did. The dinner was scheduled for 2 weeks later. It was my mother's idea. She wanted everyone together at an Italian restaurant downtown, a place with white tablecloths and entrees that started at $28. I had suggested ordering pizza at their house, but Denise Foster did not like to host when she was feeling overwhelmed. We met at the restaurant at 7. My parents were already seated when I arrived. My father, Mark, looked tired. His shoulders slumped in a way that always triggered a protective instinct in me. He was wearing a polo shirt that had seen better days. My mother looked sharp, her hair freshly dyed a deep auburn, her eyes scanning the room to see who else was dining there. "You look tired, Alice," my mother said as I sat down. "Are you sleeping?" "I'm working a lot," I said, unfolding my napkin. "It's busy season." "Well, don't work yourself to death," she said, picking up the wine list. "You need balance, like Lauren. She's really focusing on her wellness right now." I bit the inside of my cheek. Lauren was currently unemployed, or rather, between projects, as she liked to call it. She had quit her job as a marketing assistant 4 months ago because the vibes were toxic. Speaking of Lauren, my father said, checking his watch, "She's late. She's finding parking," my mother said quickly. "It's terrible downtown." I took a sip of water, flinching slightly as the ice hit the bad tooth. I covered the grimace with a cough. 10 minutes later, the front door of the restaurant opened, and Lauren breezed in. She looked expensive. That was the only word for it. Her hair was done in loose, glossy waves that required a salon blowout. She was wearing a beige trench coat that looked like cashmere, and she was holding a car key fob that was unmistakably distinct. "Sorry," Lauren announced, kissing my mother on the cheek and squeezing my father's shoulder. "Valet took forever." "You valeted?" I asked. "It cost $20 to valet here. There was a garage around the corner for $6. "I had to," Lauren said, sliding into the booth next to me. I couldn't risk scratching the new car parallel parking. I'm still getting used to the dimensions. New car. I looked at my parents. They didn't look surprised. My father looked down at his bread plate. My mother smiled, a tight, bright expression that dared me to ruin the mood. She needed reliable transportation. "Alice," my mother said. Her old car was a death trap. It was a 4-year-old Civic. I said, "It was fine. It needed new brakes," Lauren said, picking up the menu. "And honestly, for the real estate consulting I'm trying to get into, image matters. You can't pull up to a showing in a beater. It's part of the business plan." I looked at the key fob on the table. It was for a luxury German SUV. "Lauren," I said, keeping my voice low, "that is a $600 a month lease minimum." "How are you paying for that?" Lauren sighed, dropping the menu. "Here we go. Alice, stop," my mother snapped. She didn't snap loudly, but it had the whip-crack quality that had governed my childhood. "This is a celebration. Lauren is finally getting some traction. We helped her with the down payment, and she's going to handle the monthly. She's adulting. Let her be proud." "You helped her with the down payment," I repeated. The words felt like gravel in my throat. "You told me things were tight. You told me you needed my help to keep the lights on and the mortgage paid." "We do," my father said softly. "We do. Alice, it's just complicated." "It's not complicated," I said. "It's math. If you have $3,000 for a down payment on a luxury car, why do you need my $650 for the mortgage?" "Because cash flow is different than savings," my mother hissed. Leaning in, "You don't understand how finances work when you own a home. Alice, you rent? It's simple for you." I stared at her. I was a logistics coordinator. I managed multi-million-dollar supply chains. I understood cash flow better than anyone at this table. Lauren reached out and patted my hand. Her nails were manicured. Long acrylics painted a soft, milky white. That was another $80. "Alice, look," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I know it's annoying, But the parents get so anxious about the house, it really helps them sleep at night knowing you're covering that gap. Can you just keep doing the payment for a while longer? Once I close a few deals, I'll take it over, I promise. She smiled. It was a charming smile. It was the smile that got her out of parking tickets and into VIP sections. I looked at my father. He was studying the breadbasket as if it contained the secrets of the universe. He wouldn't look at me. I looked at my mother. She was glaring at me, her eyes hard, warning me not to be the difficult one, not to be the one who ruined dinner. Fine, I said. I said it because I was a coward. I said it because I couldn't handle the scene that was about to happen if I said no. Great, Lauren said, clapping her hands once. Let's order calamari. I'm starving. The friction in my life began to manifest in physical ways. I developed a twitch in my left eyelid. My sleep became fragmented, broken by dreams where I was trying to pack a suitcase that kept getting smaller. 3 days after the dinner, my friend Sarah called me. Hey, she said, we're finally booking the cabin for the girls' weekend in October. It's going to be $300 each for the lodging. Can you? Venmo me by Friday. I sat at my desk, looking at a spreadsheet. October. That was 2 months away. $300. I did the mental calculation instantly. If I paid the $300, I would be dangerously low in my checking account when the family support transfer hit on the 3rd. If I had any unexpected expense, a flat tire, a doctor's copay, I would be overdrawn. I can't. I said, what Sarah asked. Alice, we've been talking about this since Christmas. I know. I said, pressing my hand against my forehead. Things are tight right now. I have some expenses coming up. Alice, Sarah said, her voice softening. Is this about your parents again? No. I lied. It's just work stuff. Budgeting. I'm saving for a new car. My car was rattling louder every day. You need a break. Alice, Sarah said, you sound exhausted. I am, I said, but I can't go. I'm sorry. I hung up and stared at the wall of my cubicle. I was isolating myself. I was delaying medical care. I was turning down life experiences. And for what? So Lauren could drive a brand new SUV to consulting gigs that didn't exist. I decided I needed to see the portal myself. I didn't tell Lauren. I didn't tell my parents. I just wanted to see the interface. Lauren had mentioned the name of the lender once in passing, Apex Mortgage Services. I went online that night. I found the Apex Mortgage Services website. It was a generic site, blue and gray. I tried to create an account using my father's information, assuming I could verify his identity if I called him and pretended I needed a code for something else. But when I entered his social security number, which I knew by heart from years of filling out their medical forms, the system gave me an error. Record not found. That was odd. Maybe the mortgage had been sold. That happens sometimes. I tried my mother's social. Record not found. I sat back in my chair. Maybe Lauren was paying a different servicer. Maybe she had refinanced it for them and didn't explain it properly. That would explain why she was the one handling the portal. I sent Lauren a text. Hey, the portal's still down. I need to print a confirmation for my own taxes. Can you send me the login? She replied. 4 hours later, at midnight. Login is tied to my email/phone 2FA, so it's a pain to share. I'll send you the PDF tomorrow. Why are you obsessing over this? I didn't reply. Obsessing. That was the word they used whenever I asked for accountability. The next day, she sent a screenshot. It was cropped again. It showed a balance of 0 for the current amount due and a payment of $650 posted on the 4th. But the font looked strange. The 0 in the date looked slightly different than the 0 in the dollar amount. I opened the image in a photo editor and zoomed in. Around the numbers, the pixels were jagged, disorganized, artifacts. It looked like someone had pasted a text box over an existing image. My heart began to hammer a frantic rhythm against my ribs. This wasn't just irresponsibility, this was deception. The breaking point didn't come with a bang. It came with a whisper. I went to my parents' house on a Saturday morning to drop off some groceries. I often did this, bought them staples like laundry detergent, coffee, and paper towels, because I knew money was tight, or I thought I knew. I let myself in with my key. The house was quiet. My father was likely in the garage tinkering with something. I walked into the kitchen and set the bags down. I heard my mother's voice coming from the sunroom. She was on the phone, and she had it on speaker. She often did this while she was folding laundry or looking through magazines. I started to call out, to let her know I was there, but then I heard my name. Alice is just so intense about everything. My mother was saying. I froze. I recognized the other voice. It was my Aunt Carol, my mother's sister who lived in Florida. Well, she's always been a bit high-strung, Carol said, but it's nice she's helping you out. Helping my mother let out a short, dismissive laugh. Carol, she owes us. Do you know how much trouble that girl caused growing up? The orthodontist bills alone, the college tuition we co-signed for. We drained our savings to get her launched. I stood by the refrigerator, my hand gripping the handle of a reusable grocery bag so hard my knuckles turned white. Orthodontist bills, I had braces for 2 years. Everyone had braces. And college, I had worked 2 jobs. They had co-signed 1 loan, which I had paid off in full 3 years ago. She makes plenty of money now, my mother continued. She's single. She has no kids. What else is she going to do with it? Lauren is the one who needs support right now. Lauren is trying to build a future. Alice is just hoarding. I was delaying dental surgery. I was skipping vacations. I was driving a car that shook. And she treats it like a transaction, my mother said, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. Always asking for receipts. Always checking up on us. It's insulting, like she doesn't trust her own family. I felt a coldness spread through my chest. It wasn't anger. It was something deeper, more final. It was the realization that in their story, I was not the savior. I was the villain. I was the miser. I was the resource to be harvested. And my reluctance to be harvested was proof of my bad character. I left the groceries on the counter. I didn't announce myself. I turned around, walked out the front door, and got into my car. I sat in the driveway for a full minute, shaking. They didn't appreciate the help. They felt entitled to it. They had rewritten history to justify taking my money. I started the car and drove home. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I went into logistics mode. I waited until I was back at my apartment, sitting at my computer, with my banking history open in one tab and a blank email in another. I totaled the payments. I had started 22 months ago, 22 times 650, $14,300, plus the extra payments I had made when the water heater broke, $800, when my dad needed new tires, $500, when Lauren needed a certification course fee, $1,200. I scrolled back, adding it all up. The total was $21,450. I looked at that number. That was a down payment on a condo. That was a new car. That was my tooth fixed 10 times over. I picked up my phone and called Lauren. She answered on the 3rd ring. What's up? I'm at brunch. I need the account number. Lauren. Now? Alice. Oh my God. Are we doing this again? I told you I'm not asking. Lauren. I am telling you. I am looking at my bank statement. I have sent over $20,000 to you and Mom and Dad in the last 2 years. I have never seen a single official statement. You've seen the screenshots? They're fake. Lauren. There was a silence on the line. It was a thick, dangerous silence. Excuse me, she said, her voice icy. The pixels are wrong. I said, you pasted the numbers on. I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm done. I want the lender name, the account number, and the password, or I'm stopping the payments. You're crazy, Lauren said. You are actually paranoid. Mom is right about you. Put Mom on. I said, she's not here. I'm with friends. Then tell her this. I said, I want proof. Today, real proof. A PDF download of the full statement. Lauren hung up. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was my father. Alice. Honey, what is going on? Lauren called us crying. She said you accused her of forging documents. I didn't accuse her. Dad, I looked at them. They aren't real. Alice, this has to stop, he said, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and anger. You are tearing this family apart over money. I am asking for a receipt, I yelled. It was the first time I had raised my voice in years. I am asking to know where $20,000 of my money went. It went to the house, he shouted back. Why can't you just trust us? Why do you have to control everything? Because I'm the one paying for it. You're the one who can afford it, he said. And you're holding it over our heads. Lauren is trying so hard, and you're just trying to humiliate her. I was stunned. The logic was so twisted it was almost impressive. Dad, I said, my voice shaking, unless I get a statement today, I am not sending the payment on the 3rd. There was a pause. If you don't send that money, he said, his voice low and hard, you are putting your mother and me on the street. Is that what you want? You want to evict your parents to prove a point. I want to know the truth. I said. Then here's the truth. He spat. The truth is you're selfish. You always have been. You think because you have a fancy job you're better than us. If you cut us off, don't expect to come over for Sunday dinner. Don't expect us to pretend this is okay. He hung up. I sat there, the silence of my apartment ringing in my ears. Selfish. I looked at the number on my screen again. $21,450. I opened my email client. I composed a new message. Subject: financial support. Pause. Dear Mom, Dad, and Lauren. Effective immediately. I am pausing all monthly transfers. I have requested documentation regarding the mortgage account and the allocation of the funds I have provided over the last 2 years, totaling $21,450. I have not received this documentation. Until I receive a full official mortgage statement from the lender showing the account status and payment history, I will not release any further funds. This is not negotiable. Alice. I hit send. My hand was shaking. I felt like I had just jumped off a cliff. For the rest of the day, I stared at my phone, waiting for the explosion. I expected a barrage of texts, calls, guilt trips, but nothing came. 5 o'clock passed. 6 o'clock. 7. The silence was worse than the shouting. It was a punishment. It was the shunning they had used on me when I was a teenager. The withdrawal of affection until I got back in line. At 9:30 that night, a single text came through. It was from Lauren. If you stop now, don't bother calling us when things fall apart. I looked at the message. It wasn't a plea. It was a threat. And for the first time, I wondered what exactly was going to fall apart. Was it the mortgage? Or was it something else entirely? I didn't reply. I went to the bathroom, brushed my teeth, wincing as the cold water hit the molar, and went to bed. I didn't sleep, but I didn't transfer the money either. I had drawn the line. I just didn't know yet that I was standing on the edge of a sinkhole. The silence from my family lasted for 17 days. It was a heavy, suffocating silence, the kind that usually precedes a storm. I went to work. I came home. I stared at my phone, expecting a barrage of guilt-inducing texts or a sudden emergency that would force me to open my wallet again. But there was nothing. No updates on the mortgage, no pictures of the dog, no vague inquiries about my health that were really just preludes to a request for cash. Then, on the morning of the 18th day, a Tuesday, I woke up to a voicemail. My phone had been on silent while I slept. I sat up in bed, rubbing the sleep from my eyes, and saw the notification. Missed call. Unknown number, 8:15 a.m. I tapped the voicemail icon. The recording was grainy. The voice professional but weary. The sound of a call center humming in the background. This message is for Alice Foster. My name is David, and I am a loss mitigation specialist calling on behalf of Apex Mortgage Services regarding the property at 429 Elm Street. We have been unable to reach the primary contact, and given the delinquency status, we are reaching out to all parties listed on the note. Please return my call at 888. I froze. 429 Elm Street. That was the house I grew up in. That was the house my parents still lived in. I replayed the message. Delinquency status. All parties listed on the note. A cold knot formed in my stomach. It had to be a scam. It was a sophisticated one. Certainly. Referencing the address. But it had to be a scam. I had never signed a note for that house. I had never been on the deed. I was just the daughter who sent money via Zelle and bank transfer. I got out of bed, my hands trembling slightly. I needed to clear this up before I went to work. If someone was using my parents' address for fraud, I had to warn them, even if we weren't speaking. I dialed the number back. "Thank you for calling Apex Mortgage Services." A robotic voice said, "Please enter your account number or social security number." I didn't have an account number. I waited. Finally, a human picked up. "Apex Mortgage. This is Sarah." "Hi," I said. "I'm returning a call for Alice Foster. I think there's been a mistake. I don't have an account with you, but I received a voicemail about my parents' address." "One moment. Let me look you up," Sarah said. "Can I have the last 4 digits of your social security number for verification?" I hesitated. I gave them to her. "Okay, thank you," Sarah said. Her typing was loud in my ear. "I see the file here. You are verifying for the home equity line of credit ending in 44920. I said, "I'm not verifying anything. I'm telling you I don't have a home equity line of credit. That is my parents' house." "I don't own it." There was a pause on the line. "Ma'am," Sarah said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming more formal. "You are listed as a co-borrower on this account. The account was opened 18 months ago." Co-borrower. The room seemed to tilt sideways. "That is impossible." I said, "I never signed anything. According to our records, the loan was originated on June 12th of last year. We have a signed agreement. The reason for the call, Ms. Foster, is that the account is currently 60 days past due. The monthly payment of $650 has not been received for the last billing cycle." I stopped breathing. $650. That was the exact amount. That was the number I had been sending every single month. I had assumed I was helping them with their existing mortgage, the one they had been paying for 20 years. I assumed I was contributing to the household pot, but I wasn't. My money had been servicing a completely different loan. "A loan I supposedly took out?" Ma'am Sarah asked. "Are you still there?" "How much is the balance?" I asked. My voice sounded hollow, like it was coming from someone else standing across the room. "The current outstanding principal balance is $82,400. Sarah said. I dropped the phone. It hit the carpet with a dull thud. $82,000. I scrambled to pick it up. "I need to see the documents." I said, "Send me the file. We can mail a copy of the original note to the address on file." Sarah said, "No," I shouted. "Do not send it to the Elm Street address. I don't live there. I haven't lived there in 10 years. I gave her my apartment address. I hung up. I didn't go to work. I called in sick. My hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I sat down at my laptop and went to the credit bureau website. I had checked my credit score casually, through my banking app before, seeing a generic number that looked fine, but I had never pulled the full, detailed report. I paid the fee for the instant download. I scrolled past my student loans, past my credit card, past my car loan, and there it was. Apex Mortgage Services, revolving account, real estate secured, opened June 12th, joint responsibility, status late. The balance was sitting there like a tumor on my financial history. $82,400. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. 18 months ago. I tried to remember where I was 18 months ago. I was working. I was busy. I remembered Lauren coming over to my apartment one evening, saying she needed me to sign a petition for some neighborhood watch program she was trying to start. She had been manic, happy, talking a mile a minute. I had signed a clipboard she held out while I was cooking dinner. No, that was paranoid. That was a movie plot. But the alternative was that I had walked into a bank, signed mortgage papers, and forgotten about it. I grabbed my keys. The drive to my parents' house usually took 20 minutes. I made it in 12. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a script. I just had a burning, white-hot need to hear them say it wasn't true. I pulled into the driveway. Lauren's new luxury SUV was parked right in the center, gleaming in the morning sun. My father's truck was off to the side. I unlocked the front door and walked in. The house smelled like it always did, lemon pledge and old coffee. The television was on in the living room. My mother was sitting in her recliner, watching a talk show. Lauren was on the sofa, scrolling on her phone with her legs tucked under her. My father was in the kitchen, making a sandwich. They looked up when I walked in. The atmosphere shifted instantly from domestic boredom to defensive tension. "Well, look who decided to show up," my mother said, not looking away from the TV. "We thought you were done with us." I walked into the center of the living room and stood there. I was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. I hadn't showered. I must have looked deranged. I just got off the phone with Apex Mortgage. I said. The silence that followed was absolute. My mother stiffened in her chair. She reached for the remote and muted the TV, but she didn't turn around. Lauren stopped scrolling. She looked up, her face a mask of carefully constructed confusion. "Who?" Lauren asked. "Don't," I said. "Do not do that. I know about the HELOC. I know about the $82,000. I know my name is on it." My father walked in from the kitchen, wiping mustard off his hands with a paper towel. He looked terrified. He looked like a man who had been waiting for a bomb to go off for a year and a half. "Alice, keep your voice down," he said. "The neighbors. I don't care about the neighbors." I screamed. "I care that you stole my identity." "We didn't steal anything," my mother snapped, swiveling her chair around. Her face was flushed red. "We borrowed it. We are a family. Everything goes into the same pot. You put my name on a loan for $80,000 without asking me," I said. "That is a crime. That is fraud. It was a paperwork technicality," my mother said, waving her hand as if swatting away a fly. "The broker said we needed a cosigner to get the best rate. Your credit is perfect. You weren't using it for anything. It was just a name on a piece of paper." "Alice, it didn't cost you a dime." "It cost me $650 a month," I yelled. "You told me that money was for the mortgage. You told me you were behind. You were just having me service the debt you took out in my name." "We were behind," my father interjected, stepping between me and my mother. "We needed the cash to catch up on the main mortgage, and for repairs." The house was falling apart. "Alice." I looked at Lauren. She was very quiet. She was watching me with eyes that were cold and calculating. "It's literally just a formality." Lauren said. She shrugged. "You have good credit. We didn't. We needed access to the equity to stabilize the family finances. If we had asked you, you would have demanded a spreadsheet and 20 meetings and then said no. We did what we had to do to save the house." "Save the house?" I asked. "By stripping $80,000 of equity out of it." "Where did the money go?" I asked. I looked from my father to my mother to my sister. "Where is the $80,000? "Medical bills," my mother said instantly. "Your father's knee surgery. The deductibles were insane. Home repairs," my father said at the exact same time. "The roof? The HVAC?" I looked at Lauren. "Keeping the lights on," she said vaguely. "Cost of living is up. Inflation." 3 answers. 3 lies. I looked around the living room. The carpet was the same threadbare beige it had been for 5 years. The windows were the same drafty single panes. The ceiling in the corner still had the faint yellow water stain from a leak 3 years ago. There was no new roof. I would have noticed a new roof. And the medical bills, my father had excellent insurance through the union. His out-of-pocket maximum was $4,000. I knew that because I had helped him fill out the forms. I walked into the kitchen. "What are you doing?" my mother called out, her voice rising in panic. "Alice, get out of there." I ignored her. I opened the pantry. Same old food. I opened the fridge. Same old condiments. I walked down the hall to the bathroom. Same cracked tile. I went back to the living room. "You didn't spend a dime on this house," I said. "And Dad's surgery was 2 years ago. You don't know everything." My mother spat. "We have debts. We have expenses. Like what I asked. Like living," she shouted. "Like surviving. You sit in your apartment with your steady paycheck and your 401k, and you judge us. You have no idea what it's like to struggle." I looked at Lauren. She was wearing a diamond necklace. It was small, delicate, and very real. I had seen a similar one in a magazine. It cost $2,000. I pulled out my phone and opened Instagram. I didn't follow Lauren. She had blocked me months ago after a petty argument about politics, but I had a burner account I used to check on her sometimes. I had never looked closely at the dates before. I scrolled back. 18 months ago, June, there was a photo of Lauren in Tulum. Girls' trip of a lifetime blessed. July, Lauren in New York City, front row at a show, August, a photo of a new designer handbag. Finally got my baby. I looked up at her. You. I said, "It was you." Lauren rolled her eyes. "You are so dramatic." I managed the funds for them. I invested some of it. I used some of it to network. You have to spend money to make money. Alice? Invested, I asked. In what? Real estate consulting, she said. It's a long game. You wouldn't understand. I understand that you went to Mexico 3 weeks after the loan closed. I said. My mother stood up. That was a gift a friend took her. No friend took her. I said, I paid for it. Or rather, the bank paid for it. And now you expect me to pay the bank back. I walked over to the side table in the hallway. This was where my father kept the mail. The keys. The important papers. It was a chaotic mess of envelopes and rubber bands. Alice, stop it, my father yelled. He grabbed my arm. I shook him off. I didn't want to hurt him, but the adrenaline was giving me a strength I didn't know I had. I yanked the drawer open. Pens, batteries, screwdrivers. I dug to the bottom. There was a thick manila envelope. It had important written on it in my mother's handwriting. I pulled it out. Alice, put that down, my mother screamed. She was coming towards me now, moving faster than I had seen her move in years. I ripped the envelope open. Documents spilled out. I saw the blue cover sheet of a loan packet, Apex Mortgage Services. I flipped the pages frantically. There it was, the signature page. Borrower Mark Foster, signed. Co-borrower Denise Foster, signed. Co-borrower Alice Foster. I stared at the signature. It was my name. It was written in blue ink, but the A was wrong. It was too loopy, and the F in Foster didn't cross in the middle the way I did it. It looped at the top. It looked like the way I signed my name when I was 12, trying to look fancy. It looked like the way someone would sign my name if they had practiced it a few times but couldn't get the muscle memory right. And right next to it was a notary stamp. State of Ohio. Commission expires. 2028. I pulled out my phone. My mother was clawing at my hands, trying to snatch the paper away. Give it to me, she screamed. You have no right. I shoved her back. I didn't push hard, just enough to create space. She stumbled against the wall and looked at me with pure shock. I had never touched her in anger before. I snapped a photo of the signature page. I snapped a photo of the notary stamp. I snapped a photo of the first page showing the loan amount and the date. Then I threw the papers on the floor. I looked at them, my family. My father was leaning against the doorframe, his face gray, unable to look me in the eye. My mother was panting, clutching her chest, playing the victim card she always kept up her sleeve. Lauren was just sitting there, filing a nail, looking bored. You are going to jail, I said. The words were quiet, but they felt heavy as lead. Lauren laughed. It was a dry, sharp sound. Please, she said, nobody is going to jail. It's a civil matter. Mom and Dad will say, you agreed to it verbally and then got cold feet. It's he said, she said. And who is a jury going to believe the loving parents and the sister trying to get by, or the cold, corporate career woman who abandoned her family? She stood up and walked over to me. She was close enough that I could smell her perfume. It was expensive. If you report this, she whispered, you destroy them. They lose the house. Dad loses his pension. Mom loses her reputation in the church. Is that who you want to be? The daughter who put her elderly parents on the street over money? I looked at her. I saw the calculation in her eyes. She was banking on my guilt. She was banking on the fact that I had been trained since birth to be the shock absorber for this family. I stepped back. I'm not the one who destroyed them, I said. I turned around and walked out the door. My mother was screaming my name as I went down the walkway. Alice, you get back here. You ungrateful brat, you owe us. I got into my car. My hands were shaking so hard I couldn't get the key in the ignition. I had to grip the steering wheel with both hands and breathe. 1, 2, 3. I looked at the house. It looked the same as it always had. The white siding needed a power wash. The azalea bushes were overgrown. It looked like a normal American home, but inside, it was a crime scene. I started the car and backed out. I drove 2 blocks and pulled into a church parking lot. I couldn't drive. I was hyperventilating. I pulled out my phone again. I looked at the photos I had taken. The signature was so obviously fake it was insulting. But Lauren was right about one thing if I fought this. It wasn't going to be clean. They would lie. They would say I authorized it. They would drag my name through the mud. But $82,000. And it wasn't just the money. It was the 18 months of lies. Every time I had sent that transfer, thinking I was a good daughter, they had been laughing at me. Or if not laughing, they had been using me. I was an object to them, a resource. A credit score to be harvested. I opened my browser on my phone. I searched for consumer protection attorney near me. I found a firm with 5 stars. I clicked the call button. It was a receptionist. Miller and Associates. How can I help you? I need to schedule a consultation, I said. My voice was surprisingly steady. Regarding identity theft and mortgage fraud. One moment, while I waited on hold, I opened my banking app. I had $3,000 in my checking account. My savings had $5,000. I initiated a transfer. I moved every cent from the bank I had used since I was 16, the bank where my parents knew the branch manager, the bank where my accounts were linked to theirs for emergencies, to an online-only high-yield savings account I had opened for a vacation fund years ago. I zeroed out my primary accounts. I went into the settings. I changed my email address. I changed my phone number to a Google Voice number. I changed my passwords to random strings of characters I would have to write down to remember. I was severing the limbs. The lawyer came on the line. This is Robert Miller. What can I do for you? My parents took out a home equity line of credit in my name without my knowledge. I said, I have photos of the forged documents, and they are currently spending the equity while demanding I make the payments. There was a pause. A professional. Assessing pause. That is a very serious accusation. Ms. Foster, the attorney said, if this proceeds, you understand you will be initiating a criminal investigation against your parents. I looked out the window at the empty church parking lot. I thought about the envelope in the junk drawer. I thought about Lauren's trip to Tulum. I thought about my mother calling me ungrateful while wearing clothes bought with my stolen credit. I understand. I said, then let's get you in here tomorrow morning. He said, bring everything you have. And Ms. Foster. Yes. Do not speak to them. Do not answer their calls. If they show up at your house, do not open the door. I know, I said. I hung up. I sat in the silence of my car. I had prepared for retaliation. I knew it was coming. They wouldn't just take this lying down. Lauren would spin a narrative. My mother would mobilize the relatives. My father would play the confused, elderly victim. But as I put the car in drive, I realized something else. For 32 years, I had been afraid of losing my family. I had paid, and apologized, and shrank myself to keep them. But sitting there, with my empty bank account and my stolen identity, I realized I had already lost them. You can't lose people who never actually saw you in the first place. I drove home. I didn't turn on the radio. I needed to think. I needed to be ready. Because the war had just started, and I was the only soldier on my side. Robert Miller's office was not the mahogany-paneled sanctum I expected. It was modern, sterile, and smelled faintly of hand sanitizer. He sat behind a glass desk, his hands clasped over a legal pad, looking at me with the expression of a mechanic inspecting a car that had been driven off a cliff. We need to stop the bleeding, Robert said. He didn't offer me coffee or sympathy. He offered me a checklist. He slid a piece of paper across the desk. Priority 1, he said. Freeze everything. Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. Place a fraud alert. Then, we send a formal demand letter to the servicer for the full loan file under the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act. We need the qualified written request. I took notes, my pen scratching loudly in the quiet room. Priority 2, he continued. You need to document every interaction you have had with your family regarding finances for the last 5 years. Texts, emails, bank transfers, build the timeline, and priority 3. I asked. Robert leaned back. Priority 3 is the hardest part. Alice. You need to prepare yourself to file a police report for identity theft. Without it, the bank will treat this as a civil dispute between co-borrowers. With it, you are a victim of a crime, but once you file that report, the district attorney can choose to prosecute. You lose control of the train once it leaves the station. I stared at the glass desk. Prosecution meant Lauren. It meant my parents. Do I have to do that today, I asked. No, Robert said, but you will likely have to do it eventually. Let's get the evidence first. I left his office with a headache that throbbed behind my eyes like a second heartbeat. I sat in my car and opened my laptop. I had to send the email. Robert had advised me to keep it simple, factual, and devoid of emotion. To Denise Foster. Mark Foster. Lauren Foster, subject, request for information regarding loan 4492, Mom, Dad, Lauren. I have retained counsel to address the unauthorized home equity line of credit opened in my name on the Elm Street property. To resolve this matter, I am requesting a written explanation of how this loan was originated without my consent, and a full accounting of how the $82,000 in principal was spent. Please provide receipts, invoices, or transfer records by Friday. Alice. I read it 3 times. It felt like I was serving a subpoena to my own childhood. I hit send. The response came 11 minutes later. It wasn't from Lauren. It wasn't from my father. It was from my mother. After everything we've done. You're choosing money over family. That was it. No denial. No explanation. Just the weaponized guilt she had honed to a razor's edge over 3 decades. She didn't deny the fraud. She only condemned my reaction to it. I didn't reply. I called the credit bureaus instead. The package from Apex Mortgage Services arrived 4 days later. It was a thick, heavy envelope that landed on my doorstep with a dull thud. I carried it to my kitchen table. I had taken the day off work. I couldn't focus on logistics chains when my own life was unraveling. I sliced the envelope open. The smell of toner and paper filled the air. I started sorting. Application, disclosures, note, deed of trust. I found the Uniform Residential Loan Application. I scanned the borrower section. Mark Foster, Social Security number matching, employment retired. I moved to the co-borrower section. Alice Foster. My Social Security number was correct. My date of birth was correct. But the contact information was wrong. Email alice.foster.investments gmail.com. I stared at it. I had never owned that domain. I had never used that address. Phone 555-0199. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number. It went straight to voicemail. Hi. You've reached the voicemail of Lauren. Leave a message. I hung up. My hand was shaking. I turned the page. There was a log titled Verbal Verification of Employment. Date, June 14th. Time, 10:30. A.M. Notes, spoke with borrower, Alice Foster. Confirmed employment at Logistics Corp. Confirmed salary. Confirmed intent to proceed. I looked at the date. June 14th. I opened my work calendar on my laptop. I scrolled back 18 months. June 14th, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Quarterly business review with regional VP. Mandatory attendance. I clicked on the event details. It had been a Zoom meeting. I had been presenting the Q2 efficiency slides. The meeting had been recorded. I wasn't on the phone with Apex Mortgage. I was on a video call with 40 people. Someone else had been on that phone. I closed the file. I felt a cold, clear rage settling over me. It wasn't the hot, messy anger of the dinner party. This was different. This was the anger of someone who realizes they haven't just been wronged. They have been impersonated. I didn't call Robert. I needed to look her in the eye. I knew Lauren would be at the house. She was remote working this month, which usually meant she was lying on my parents' sofa curating her Pinterest boards. I drove over. I didn't park in the driveway. I parked on the street. I walked up the path. Ignoring the knot in my stomach, I let myself in. Lauren was exactly where I thought she would be, sitting at the kitchen island, a laptop open, a glass of iced tea sweating on a coaster next to her. She looked up when I walked in, her expression shifting from boredom to annoyance. "I thought Mom told you not to come over," she said. I placed the folder on the counter. I opened it to the page with the email address. Alice, Foster, Investments. I read aloud. "Is that you?" Lauren took a sip of her tea. She didn't look at the paper. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. "And the phone number?" I said, "It routes to your burner phone." "Lauren, the one you used for dating apps last year." She shrugged. "So, maybe I helped fill out the forms. You're busy. You're always busy." Someone had to handle the admin. I flipped to the verification log. June 14th. I said, 10:30 a.m. Someone pretended to be me. Someone verified my employment and my salary. I was in a recorded meeting at work. Who was on the phone? Lauren. She looked at me then. A slow smirk spread across her face. It was the expression of someone who believes they are smarter than everyone else in the room. "You always loved playing victim." "Alice," she said softly, "you love this. You love the drama. You love having a reason to look down on us." "I'm not the victim," I said. "I'm the mark. There's a difference." "Did you feel powerful?" she asked, her voice mocking. "Did you feel important when you cut us off? Or did you just feel lonely because that's what you are?" "Alice, you're lonely and you're bitter and you can't stand that Mom and Dad actually like me better." The cruelty of it took my breath away. It was so irrelevant to the mortgage, yet so perfectly targeted to hurt. Before I could answer, the back door opened. My parents walked in from the garden. My father was holding a basket of tomatoes. My mother was wiping her hands on her apron. "Alice," my mother said, her face hardening. I told you. Lauren's face crumpled instantly. The smirk vanished, replaced by a trembling lip and wide, watery eyes. "I was just trying to explain," Lauren wailed, her voice pitching up into a sob. "I was trying to tell her we're going to fix it, but she just keeps threatening me. She says she's going to call the police on me." "Mom." My mother dropped the towel and rushed to Lauren, wrapping her arms around her. "Alice," my mother shouted at me, "get out. You come into this house and terrorize your sister. Have you lost your mind? She stole my identity." I shouted back, pointing at the folder. "She pretended to be me on a federal loan application. She was helping the family," my mother screamed. "Unlike you." I looked at my father. He was standing by the sink, gripping the tomato basket. He wasn't looking at Lauren. He was looking at the folder on the counter. "Dad," I said, "look at me." He slowly raised his eyes. "Did you know?" I asked. "Did you know she impersonated me on the verification call, Mark?" "Don't answer her," my mother snapped. "She's recording us. She's probably wearing a wire. She's paranoid." "Dad," I said again, "did you sign the paper thinking I had agreed? Or did you forge my signature too?" My father set the basket down. He looked older than I had ever seen him. His skin was gray, papery. "Lauren said she talked to you," he whispered. "Mark," my mother warned. He ignored her. "Lauren said she had a long talk with you." He continued, his voice shaking. "She said you were too busy to come to the signing, but you gave her permission to handle the details. She said the house would be secured." I looked at Lauren. She was burying her face in Mom's shoulder, but I saw her eyes darting to my father, sharp and warning. "And the signature?" I asked. I didn't look close. He said, "I just signed where the notary told me to. I thought you were on board. Alice, I thought we were all in this together." He looked at me with a devastating vulnerability. "I'm so scared." "Alice," he said, "I'm scared of losing the house. I just wanted to stop the collections calls." I felt a crack in my resolve. He was weak. Yes, he was foolish. But he hadn't maliciously plotted against me. He had been manipulated, just like I had. Then my mother spoke. "Oh, stop it. Mark," she said, pulling away from Lauren. "You knew she hadn't signed it." The room went dead silent. My father turned to look at his wife. "What you knew?" Denise repeated, smoothing her apron. "You knew Alice wouldn't sign it if we asked. She would have lectured us. She would have made us feel small. She would have told us we couldn't afford it." She turned to face me. Her eyes were dry and hard as flint. I felt trapped. "Alice," she said, "the bills were piling up. The roof was leaking. Lauren needed a start. And you? You always handle everything. You're the strong one. I knew if we just got the loan, you could handle the payments. You always figure it out." I stared at her. "You used me." I said, "You counted on my competence to cover your crime. I counted on your loyalty," she corrected. And clearly, I was wrong. The admission hurt more than the lost money. It hurt more than the lies. It was a confirmation that my role in this family was not to be loved, but to be used. My stability was not a virtue to them. It was a resource to be exploited. I grabbed the folder. "I'm leaving," I said. "Run away." Lauren shouted after me, her voice suddenly clear of tears. "Go back to your sad little apartment." I walked out. I didn't look back. I went straight to Robert Miller's office. I didn't have an appointment, but his receptionist saw my face and buzzed me in. I sat in the chair and put the folder on the desk. They admitted it. I said, "My father thought I agreed. My mother knew I didn't." Lauren impersonated me on the phone. Robert nodded slowly. He didn't look surprised. "We have the how," he said. "Now we need the where." He turned his monitor so I could see it. I subpoenaed the transaction history on the HELOC account. He said, "The bank released it this morning." He pointed to a column of figures. June 15th, transfer out, $30,000. Recipient, L Squared Management, LLC. July 1st, transfer out, $20,000. Recipient, L Squared Management, LLC. August 10th, transfer out, $15,000. Recipient cash withdrawal, L Squared. I said, "Lauren." "I ran a corporate search," Robert said. "L Squared Management was registered 18 months ago. Sole proprietor Lauren Foster. The business address is your parents' house. She didn't use it for the house." I said, I felt sick. "No," Robert said. "It looks like she used it to fund a business venture." I remembered Lauren's real estate consulting phase, the Instagram posts about being a boss babe, the networking events, the new wardrobe. She used my credit to play business, I said, and she failed. Robert said, "The account for L Squared is currently overdrawn by $400. The money is gone." "Alice," I stared at the screen. $65,000 transferred to a shell company and evaporated. "There's one more thing," Robert said. His voice was graver now. He clicked a new tab. When I pulled the title report for the house to verify the HELOC, I found something else. He slid a document across the desk. Notice of judgment lien. It was dated 4 months ago. "Who is this?" I asked. "It's a hard money lender," Robert said. "High interest. Predatory. It looks like your parents, or Lauren." Took out a second. "Smaller loan against the house. $15,000. And they defaulted. Stacking," I whispered. "They are drowning." "Alice," Robert said. "This isn't just about the HELOC. The house is over-encumbered. If the HELOC is called due because of fraud, and this judgment lien executes, there is no equity left. The house is underwater." I sat back. "If I prove the fraud, the HELOC goes away from my name, right?" "Yes," Robert said. "But the bank will still want their money. They will foreclose on the house to get it. Your parents will lose the home. And if I don't prove the fraud, then you are liable for $82,000. Plus interest, plus the judgment lien if you want to save the house. You will be paying this off for the next 15 years. I looked at the window. I saw the traffic moving outside, people going about their lives, unaffected by the anchor dragging me down. "I have to file the report." I said, "Alice," Robert said gently, "if you file an identity theft report with the FTC and the police, it becomes a criminal matter. Lauren could face felony charges, wire fraud, bank fraud, identity theft. She did those things." I said, "Yes, she did. But you need to be sure you can live with being the one who turned the key." I thought about my father's gray face. I thought about my mother's justification. I knew you could handle it. They would do it again. That was the terrifying truth. If I paid this off, if I saved them this time, they would wait 6 months and do it again. Because I was the safety net. I was the one who handled it. The only way to save myself was to cut the net. I'm sure, I said. The police station was loud and smelled of stale coffee. I sat at a metal desk across from a detective who looked like he had seen everything and was impressed by none of it. He took my statement. He looked at the photos of the forged signature. He looked at the bank transfer logs Robert had printed out. "This is a lot of money," the detective said. "Yes," I said. "And you're sure you want to press charges? This is your sister." I looked at his badge. "I'm reporting a crime." I said, "The identity of the perpetrator shouldn't matter." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay, we'll open a case." He gave me a case number on a small white card. I walked out of the station. It was dark now. The streetlights were humming. I sat in my car and took a picture of the case number. I uploaded it to the identitytheft.gov website. I generated the official identity theft report. I emailed the report to Robert. Subject FTC. Report/police report attached. Robert. Please file the disputes with the credit bureaus and Apex Mortgage immediately. I put the phone down. It was done. I drove home in a daze. I felt light, but it was the lightness of shock, not relief. I walked into my apartment and poured a glass of water. I didn't turn on the lights. My phone buzzed. Then again. I looked at the screen. Aunt Carol, Cousin Mike, my mother, Lauren, my father. The news had traveled fast. The police must have called the house, or maybe Apex Mortgage had already sent a notification based on the fraud alert. I let it ring. I saw a notification from Instagram. I opened it against my better judgment. Lauren had posted a story. It was a black screen with white text. "It's funny how the people you trust the most are the ones who stab you in the back. Some people value money over human beings. Sad to see toxicity win today. Betrayal family is over." I swiped it away. My phone rang again. It was my mother. I stared at the screen. Mom calling. I shouldn't answer. Robert had told me not to answer, but I needed to hear it. I needed to know that I had made the right choice. I picked up. Alice. Her voice was low, trembling with a rage so deep it sounded like growling. "I'm here," I said. "The police just called the house," she said. "They want to speak to Lauren." "I know." I said. "How could you?" she whispered. "How could you do this to your own blood? Lauren is fragile." "Alice, she can't handle prison. She can't handle a record. You are destroying her life. She destroyed her own life when she committed a felony." I said, "She is your sister," my mother screamed. The sound distorted the speaker. "You are heartless. You are a cold, unfeeling robot." "I wish." She stopped. "You wish what I asked. I wish I had never asked you for a dime." She said, "I wish we had never involved you." "But you did." I said, "You didn't ask. You took." "If you don't drop this," my mother said, her voice dropping to a terrifying calm, "if you don't call the police back right now and tell them it was a misunderstanding." "I'm not doing that." "Mom, then you are not my daughter." She said, "Do not call us. Do not come here. You are dead to us." The line went dead. I sat in the dark. I looked at the phone in my hand. I was free. I had $70,000 of debt erased from my name. I had protected my credit. I had stopped the bleeding. But as I sat there, listening to the silence of my empty apartment, I realized the cost. I was an orphan now, a living orphan. I put the phone on the coffee table. I pulled my knees to my chest. And for the first time since the first payment left my account 2 years ago, I cried. I cried for the parents I wanted, not the ones I had. I cried for the sister I used to play Barbies with, before she became a stranger who viewed me as a mark. I cried until my chest ached. Then I wiped my face. I stood up. I went to the bathroom and brushed my teeth. I had work tomorrow. I had a logistics chain to manage. I had a life to build, one that was finally completely my own. I just didn't know yet that the legal system moved slower than heartbreak, and that Lauren wasn't done fighting yet. The letter from Apex Mortgage Services was printed on paper so crisp it felt sharp enough to cut skin. It was a notice of conditional forbearance, a phrase that sounded polite but meant something entirely different in the legal world. Robert Miller translated it for me in his office 2 days later. It means they are pausing the foreclosure clock, but they are not stopping the time. He said, "The interest is still accruing. The late fees are still calculating. They are simply agreeing not to seize the house while the fraud investigation is active. But Alice, you need to understand the position they are taking." He pointed to a paragraph in the middle of the page, highlighted in yellow. Apex Mortgage Services reserves the right to hold all named borrowers, including Alice Foster, fully liable for the outstanding balance of $84,200.16 should the claim of identity theft be deemed unsubstantiated. They are betting you will fold, Robert said. Most family fraud cases end with a settlement because the victim gets cold feet about sending their parents or siblings to prison. The bank knows this. They are waiting for you to crack. I looked at the number. $84,000. It had grown by $2,000 just in interest and penalties in the last month. I am not going to fold, I said. Robert nodded, but his eyes were weary. He had seen this movie before. Just be ready, he said. The pressure is going to shift from legal to personal. They will try to make you feel like the villain for enforcing your rights. I didn't have to wait long to see what he meant. 3 days later, I walked out of my office building at 5:30. The sun was setting, casting long, bruised shadows across the asphalt of the parking lot. I was tired. My work performance had dipped. I had missed a shipping deadline for a client in Hamburg because I was on the phone with the credit bureaus, and my boss had given me a verbal warning. I reached my car, a silver sedan that needed a wash, and unlocked the door. "Hi, Alice," I jumped, dropping my keys. Lauren was leaning against the car parked next to mine. She was wearing a beige trench coat and sunglasses, looking like she was posing for a lifestyle blog even in the dim light of a Tuesday evening. I didn't answer. I stooped to pick up my keys, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Robert's instructions were clear. Do not engage. Do not speak. I unlocked my door and tried to get in. Lauren moved. She didn't lunge. She just stepped smoothly between me and the open door, blocking my path. She wasn't aggressive. She was calm. She was the picture of reasonable concern. "Alice, please," she said. "I'm not here to fight. I just want to offer a solution." I stepped back. "Move, Lauren. Look," she said, lowering her sunglasses. "Mom and Dad are a wreck. Dad isn't sleeping. Mom is pacing the house all night. You made your point. Okay, you scared us. We get it. But this police report, it's a nuclear option. It destroys everyone. It's not an option." I said, "It's a report of what happened. I have a deal for you," Lauren said. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. "I talked to a friend of mine who does finance," she continued. "We can restructure this. If you drop the fraud report, I can get the bank to modify the loan. I'll take over the primary payments. You just contribute a small amount, say, $200 a month to help with the interest for a year. Then I refinance the whole thing into my name once my business credit improves." I stared at her. "You want me to pay $200 a month?" I asked. "For a loan you stole?" "It's a bridge, Alice," she said, her voice tightening slightly. "It's a way out that doesn't involve Dad having a heart attack from stress. I will handle the rest. I promise." I laughed. It was a dry, broken sound. "You promise?" I asked. "Like you promised the money was for home repairs. Like you promised Dad the house was secured." I looked at her. Really looked at her. Beneath the makeup and the expensive coat, she looked tired. There was a desperation in her eyes that she was trying very hard to hide behind a mask of competence. "Where did the money go?" "Lauren," I asked. She sighed, looking away. "I told you," she said. "Business expenses." "No," I said. $65,000 isn't business expenses for a consulting firm that has no clients. Where did it go?" She bit her lip. She looked at the ground, then at the sky, then back at me. "I had an opportunity," she said quietly. "A crypto investment. It was a sure thing. Alice, everyone said it was going to triple in 6 months. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. You gambled it. I said, "It wasn't gambling," she snapped. "It was investing." "But the market crashed. I lost the first 10,000 in a week." "The first 10,000, she nodded, her face twisting with a mix of shame and defiance. I panicked. She said, "I thought if I just put more in, I could average down, I could make it back before anyone noticed. So I transferred more, and then I needed to pay the minimums on the credit cards I used to open the account. So I took more. It snowballed." She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "I was trying to fix it. Alice, I wasn't trying to steal. I was trying to win it back so I could pay off the HELOC and surprise Mom and Dad with a paid-off house. I wanted to be the hero for once." I stared at her. It was so pathetic, and yet so terrifyingly human. She had dug a hole, and instead of asking for a ladder, she had grabbed a shovel and dug faster, throwing the dirt onto my face. "You gambled my credit." I said, "You gambled Mom and Dad's house, and now you want me to pay $200 a month to help you cover up the fact that you lost." "I'm offering you peace," she hissed. "I'm offering you a way to have a family left at the end of this. I don't want that kind of peace," I said. I pushed past her. She grabbed my arm. "Alice, if you do this," she whispered, her voice low and venomous, "you are proving everything Mom says about you. You care more about being right than being good." I shook her hand off. "I care about not being a victim," I said. I got into the car and locked the door. Lauren stood there, watching me, her face a mask of cold fury. I drove away, checking my rearview mirror until she was just a beige speck in the distance. The next morning, a courier arrived at my office. The receptionist called me to the front desk. "You have a package. Alice, personal." It was a large brown envelope. There was no return address. But I recognized the handwriting on the front. It was my father's looping, shaky script. I took it back to my desk and opened it with a letter opener. Inside was a handwritten letter on lined yellow paper, and a document typed up on what looked like a home computer. "Dearest Alice, we are writing this because we are heartbroken. We know you are angry. You have every right to be angry. We made mistakes. We trusted blindly, and we put you in a position you didn't ask for. But please, honey, think about what you are doing. The police called yesterday. They want to interview your mother. They want to fingerprint your sister. We cannot survive a scandal like this. Your mother is sick with worry. She hasn't eaten in 2 days. We are proposing a solution. We will pay you back, every cent. Enclosed is a repayment plan. We will sign it. We will notarize it. Just please, tell the lawyer to stop the investigation. Tell the bank it was a misunderstanding. We love you. Dad," I pulled out the typed document. "Repayment agreement. Mark and Denise Foster agree to pay Alice Foster the sum of $84,000 in monthly installments." I looked at the amount. Payment amount, $150 per month. I grabbed my calculator. 84,000 divided by 150. 560 months. 46 years. My father was 68 years old. They were offering to pay me back by the time I was 78. It wasn't a repayment plan. It was a stalling tactic. It was a piece of paper designed to make them feel like they were doing something honorable. While asking me to absorb the actual cost of their ruin, they couldn't afford a real repayment. They had no savings. Their only asset was the house, which was now drowning in debt. I felt a wave of nausea. They were terrified. Yes. But they were still protecting Lauren. They were asking me to eat $80,000 of debt so Lauren wouldn't have to face a judge. I scanned the letter and the agreement. I emailed them to Robert. "Subject communication from parents, Robert. I received this today. I am not signing it. Please add it to the evidence file as proof that they acknowledge the debt exists." I put the original letter in my shredder. I couldn't look at my father's handwriting anymore. It didn't look like love. It looked like manipulation. 2 days later, Robert called me. "Alice, can you come in? I found something in the notary log that we need to discuss." I went to his office on my lunch break. Robert had the full loan file spread out on his desk again. "We knew the signature was forged," Robert said, "but I was struggling to understand how they got a notary to stamp it without you present. Even a lazy notary usually requires the person to be in the room." He slid a document toward me. It was a single page, titled Limited Power of Attorney for Real Estate Transactions. It was dated 3 days before the loan closed. It stated that Alice Foster granted Lauren Foster the authority to sign loan documents on her behalf due to unavoidable work travel. It was signed by Alice Foster, and it was notarized by a different notary, someone local, someone whose name I didn't recognize. This is how they did it, Robert said. Lauren went to a notary, maybe a friend, maybe someone she paid off, or maybe she just fooled them with a fake ID and created this power of attorney. Then she took this document to the loan signing agent. The loan signing agent didn't need to see you, they just needed to see this paper. I stared at the document. It was a forgery built to enable a forgery. It was layers of lies. She planned this. I said, this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision because I couldn't make it to a meeting. She drafted this. She typed it up. Yes, Robert said. This proves premeditation. This destroys the misunderstanding defense. This is first-degree fraud. I felt a strange sense of clarity. For weeks, I had been battling a small, nagging voice in the back of my head that sounded like my mother. We were desperate. We didn't mean to hurt you, but you don't draft a fake power of attorney out of desperation. You do it out of calculation. This changes things, doesn't it? I asked. It does, Robert said. It gives us the smoking gun. But Alice, it also means your sister is looking at significant jail time if this goes to trial. Forgery of a public record is a felony. Using it to obtain $80,000 is grand larceny. I looked at the signature. It was the same loopy, childish scrawl. She did this to me. I said, she didn't just borrow money. She stole my name. She stole my agency. I looked up at Robert. Send it to the detective. I said, that night, I sat in my apartment and realized I had to secure my own perimeter. My family had proven that there was no boundary they wouldn't cross. They had impersonated me. They had forged my signature. They had guilt-tripped me. I opened my laptop and logged into my company's HR portal. I went to the emergency contacts section. Primary contact, Mark Foster, father. Secondary contact, Lauren Foster, sister. I hit edit. I deleted them. I stared at the empty fields. Who did I have? I didn't have a partner. My friends were close. But were they medical decision close? I typed in the name of my best friend, Sarah. I would have to ask her tomorrow if she minded. Then I went to my passwords. I used a password manager to generate random 20-character strings for everything: email, bank, social media, Netflix. Then I wrote the letter. Robert had advised me to send a cease and desist regarding informal communication. He said it was necessary to stop the harassment. To Mark Foster, Denise Foster, Lauren Foster, from Alice Foster. No contact boundary, effective immediately. Do not contact me via phone, text, email, or in person. Do not come to my place of employment. Do not come to my home. All communication regarding the loan, the property, or the repayment must be directed to my attorney, Robert Miller. If you attempt to contact me directly, I will document it as harassment and forward it to the police department handling the open fraud investigation. Alice, I hit send. I felt like I was cutting an umbilical cord with a rusty knife. It was painful, ugly, and necessary for survival. I realized then that the financial abuse was just a symptom. The disease was the family dynamic itself. When stress hit, they didn't circle the wagons to protect the weakest member. They circled the wagons to protect the most volatile one, Lauren. And to do that, they sacrificed the steady one. They sacrificed me because they knew I could take it. They knew I was resilient. They punished me for my competence. I wasn't just paying a mortgage. I was paying a tax on being the responsible child. The next day, a notification popped up on my Instagram. It was a message request from a user I didn't follow, Jessie_K_88. I recognized the handle. Jessica was Lauren's best friend from high school. They were inseparable. I hesitated. Was this another attack? Another flying monkey sent by my mother to guilt me? I opened the message. Hey, Alice. You didn't hear this from me? but I think you should see what she's saying. It's messed up. Attached were 3 screenshots from a group chat named Boss Babes. I zoomed in. Lauren, ugh. My sister is being such a nightmare. She's threatening to sue mom and dad. Friend 1, OMG, that's insane. Who sues their parents? Lauren, I know. Right? She's always been jealous that I'm the favorite. She's trying to punish them for helping me with the business. Friend 2. Is she actually gonna do it, Lauren? Please. Alice, she's a doormat. She needs mom's approval like she needs oxygen. She'll throw a tantrum. I'll cry a little. And she'll pay it. She always pays. She's desperate for us to like her. I read the last message 3 times. She's a doormat. She's desperate for us to like her. It wasn't anger I felt. It was a cold, clarifying grief. Lauren didn't respect me. She didn't even fear me. She viewed me as a utility, an appliance that dispensed money when you pushed the right emotional buttons. And she was right. I had been desperate for them to like me. I had paid $20,000 over 2 years just to hear my father say, "You're a good daughter." I took a screenshot of the conversation. I saved it to a folder labeled Evidence. I didn't reply to Jessica. I closed my laptop and looked at the reflection of my face in the dark screen. "You are not a doormat," I whispered to the empty room. "Not anymore." I started therapy the following week. My therapist was a woman named Dr. Evans. She was older, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "So, Doctor," Evans said in our first session, "tell me why you are here." "My family stole $80,000 from me." I said, "And I feel guilty about reporting it. That's a very common reaction to trauma." She said, "You are mourning what I asked. I haven't lost anyone. They are all still alive. You are mourning the family you thought you had." She said, "You paid that money for 2 years not just to help them, but to buy a ticket to the family unit. You thought if you paid the admission fee, you would be safe, you would be loved." I looked at my hands, and now she asked, "Now I realize the ticket was fake." I said, "And that is a death. Alice, it is the death of a hope. You have to grieve that." I cried in her office. I cried for the little girl who tried to get straight as so her mother would smile. I cried for the teenager who worked 2 jobs so she wouldn't be a burden. I cried for the woman who wrote checks to keep a house warm that she wasn't even welcome in. But when I left the session, I felt lighter. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't selfish. I was just waking up. 2 weeks later, the summons came. It wasn't a court summons yet. It was a formal invitation to a review hearing with Apex Mortgage Services. Robert called me. "This is it. Alice, this is the moment. We present the evidence. The fraud team will be there. Their legal counsel will be there. We have to convince them that you are not liable." "What if we fail?" I asked. "Then we go to court." Robert said, "But if we can kill this here, we save you 2 years of litigation." I spent the weekend preparing. I organized the binder, Tab A, the forged signature comparisons, Tab B, the work calendar proving I was in a meeting during the verification call, Tab C, the email records showing the fake address, Tab D, the screenshots of the transfers to Lauren's LLC, Tab E, the fake power of attorney, Tab F, the Boss Babes chat logs proving Lauren's intent to manipulate, Tab G, the repayment proposal from my parents admitting the debt. It was a mountain of evidence. It was the autopsy of my family. On the morning of the hearing, I put on my best suit. It was navy blue, sharp, professional. I looked in the mirror. I didn't look like a victim. I didn't look like a doormat. I looked like a woman who was done paying for things she didn't buy. I grabbed the binder. I walked out the door. I knew my parents would be there. I knew Lauren would be there. I knew they would try to charm, to cry, to gaslight. But I had something they didn't have. I had the receipts. The conference room at the regional office of Apex Mortgage Services was designed to intimidate. It was a glass-walled box, suspended in the center of the 20th floor, offering a panoramic view of the city skyline, a view that seemed to say, "We own this town, and you are just a line item." I sat on one side of the long mahogany table. Robert Miller sat next to me, his briefcase open. His posture relaxed but alert. He looked like a shark swimming in familiar waters. On the other side sat my family. My father, Mark, looked shrunken in his Sunday suit. The collar was too loose around his neck, highlighting the sudden weight loss of the last few weeks. My mother, Denise, wore a stiff floral blouse and held her purse on her lap with a white-knuckled grip, staring at a spot on the wall just above my head. And then there was Lauren. She sat between them, acting as the structural support for the crumbling ruins of the Foster dynasty. She was dressed in a soft gray cardigan and slacks, projecting an image of modest, misunderstood youth. She had brought a notepad. She looked ready to take minutes for a PTA meeting, not defend herself against felony fraud accusations. At the head of the table sat Mr. Henderson. He was the escalation manager for Apex. He was a man of indeterminate age with a hairline that had retreated in an orderly fashion and eyes that had seen every version of a lie a human being could invent. "Thank you all for coming," Mr. Henderson said. His voice was dry, devoid of warmth. "We are here to conduct a preliminary review of the fraud claim filed by Miss Alice Foster regarding the home equity line of credit ending in 4492. This is an informal fact-finding meeting to determine if we can resolve this matter internally or if it requires referral to federal authorities." He opened a folder. "Ms. Alice Foster alleges she did not sign the loan documents, did not receive the funds, and was unaware of the account's existence until the default notice. Ms. Lauren Foster, along with Mark and Denise Foster, contend the loan was authorized." He looked up. "Let's start with the basics. Who signed the note Robert signaled for me to speak?" I placed my hands flat on the cold wood of the table to stop them from shaking. "I did not sign it," I said. My voice was steady. "I was not present at the signing. I was not in the state on the date the notary log claims I was there. I was at a logistics conference in Chicago. Here is my flight itinerary and my hotel receipt." I slid the documents across the table. Henderson picked them up, his face impassive. Lauren cleared her throat. It was a delicate, sad sound. "Mr. Henderson," she said. "May I?" Henderson nodded. "Alice is technically correct," Lauren said, offering me a pitying smile. "She wasn't physically in the room, but that is because she asked me to handle it for her. She was so busy with work she's always working that she signed a limited power of attorney so I could execute the documents on her behalf. We were trying to make it easy for her." She pulled a paper from her notepad. "Here is the power of attorney," she said. Henderson took it. He glanced at it, then at me. "I never signed that." I said, "That is also a forgery." Lauren sighed, turning to our parents. "See, this is what I mean. She's rewriting history because she's scared of the debt." She turned back to Henderson. "My sister agreed to this loan," Lauren said earnestly. "She knew Mom and Dad were drowning. She wanted to help. But Alice, she has a lot of resentment toward the family. She feels like she had to grow up too fast. Now that the market turned and the payments got tight, she's using this to punish us. She's trying to teach us a lesson by pretending she was never involved." My mother nodded vigorously. "It's true," Denise said, her voice trembling. "Alice has always been difficult. She holds grudges. She told us to do whatever we had to do to save the house. Now she's changing her story because she doesn't want to damage her credit score. She's choosing a number on a screen over her own flesh and blood. The narrative was seamless. I was the cold, calculating career woman throwing her loving family under the bus to save a few points on her FICO score." Robert leaned forward. "If my client authorized this loan," he said, his voice cutting through the emotional fog like a scalpel. "Why is her contact information incorrect on the application?" Lauren didn't blink. "Data entry error," she suggested. Or maybe Alice gave an old email. I looked at Lauren. I locked eyes with her. I decided to speak directly to her. I ignored Robert's advice to only address the mediator. "Lauren," I said. She looked at me, her eyes defiant. "If I agreed to the loan," I asked, "why did you use your email address on the application?" "I didn't," she said too quickly. "Yes, you did," I said. You used alice.foster.investments@gmail.com. We subpoenaed the IP logs for that account creation. It was created on a computer located at 429 Elm Street, Mom and Dad's house, on a laptop with the serial number registered to you. Lauren stiffened. And the phone number. I continued. You listed GIA 550199. That is a burner number from an app called TextNow. We subpoenaed those records too. The account is linked to your personal credit card. I leaned in. Why would I? A person with a valid phone number and email address that I have had for 10 years. Ask you to create fake ones for me. Lauren opened her mouth, then closed it. The polite mask slipped for a fraction of a second, revealing the panic underneath. We were managing the account for you, she snapped. You didn't want the spam emails. You asked me to filter the communications. I asked you to commit a federal crime to save me from spam, I asked. She glared at me. You are such a liar, she hissed. You are twisting everything to make yourself look like a victim. You always do this. You love being the martyr. Poor Alice, the only one who works. Poor Alice, the only one who pays. You love holding it over our heads. Mr. Henderson raised a hand. Ms. Foster, he said to Lauren, please address the question regarding the contact information. Why was the borrower's direct contact info not used? Lauren faltered. She looked at our father. Dad, tell him Alice knew. My father looked at the table. He was sweating. Mark, my mother whispered. Say something. Robert Miller pulled another document from his folder. Before you answer, Mr. Foster, Robert said, I would like to submit this into the record. He slid a heavy bound report to Henderson. This is the preliminary opinion from a certified forensic document examiner, Robert said. He analyzed the signatures on the note, the deed of trust, and the power of attorney. He compared them to 20 known samples of Alice Foster's signature from tax returns and driver's licenses. Henderson opened the report, and Henderson asked. Robert paused for effect. His conclusion is that there is a 99% probability that the signatures are simulations. Robert said, specifically, the pressure points indicate the signer was pausing to look at a reference image while writing. It's a drawing of a signature, not a signature. The room went silent. The hum of the air conditioning sounded like a jet engine. Henderson looked at the report. He traced the signature with his finger. Then he looked at Mark. Mr. Foster, Henderson said. His voice was no longer procedural. It was grave. You are listed as the primary borrower. You signed these documents in person. Yes, my father whispered. Did you see your daughter? Alice Foster. Sign this document, Henderson asked. My mother grabbed my father's arm. Mark, did you see her sign it? Henderson repeated. Or did you see someone else sign it? My father looked at me. His eyes were red-rimmed and watery. He looked at Lauren, who was staring at him with a mix of command and terror. He took a deep breath. I didn't see her sign it, he said. Mark, my mother gasped. Lauren told me Alice had signed it earlier. My father continued, his voice gaining a shred of strength. She brought the papers home. She said Alice came by while I was at the store. She showed me the signature. She said, look, Dad, Alice is on board. It's all fixed. He looked at Lauren. You told me she signed it, he said to her. You told me she wanted to help but didn't want to make a big scene about it. Lauren slammed her hand on the table. Oh, so now it's all my fault, she shouted. You were happy enough to take the money. Dad. You didn't ask too many questions when the check cleared and you could pay off your credit cards. I didn't know it was stolen. My father shouted back, his voice cracking. I thought my daughter was helping me. You two are pathetic, my mother hissed. She wasn't looking at them. She was looking at Henderson. Please, she said to the manager, her voice dropping to a desperate whisper. You can't put this in the official record. If this gets out, the neighbors, the church. I stared at her. The church, I asked. Mom, we are talking about grand larceny and forgery. We are talking about prison. And you are worried about the church gossip circle. You don't understand, my mother cried, turning on me with sudden ferocity. You live in the city where nobody knows you. We have a standing in this community. If people find out our own daughter had to sue us because we stole from her. The shame. Alice, the shame will kill me. She looked at Henderson. Can't we just pay it back, she begged. We can work out a payment plan. Just keep it quiet. Don't call the police. Henderson closed the folder. The sound was final. Mrs. Foster, he said, this is not a matter of gossip. This is a matter of bank fraud. Once an allegation of identity theft is corroborated by a co-borrower, your husband, we are required by law to file a suspicious activity report. He stood up. I am referring this case to our internal fraud investigations unit. They will be in touch with local law enforcement. He looked at me. Ms. Foster, I strongly suggest you proceed with a quiet title action to remove your name from the deed's encumbrance, based on what I heard today. We will likely not contest it, provided the police report is filed. He walked out of the room. We sat there in the wreckage. My father had his head in his hands. My mother was weeping, not for her crime, but for her reputation. And Lauren was looking at me. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shouting. She was looking at me with a hatred so pure it felt like a physical blow. You happy now? She asked softly. You won. I stood up. I didn't feel like I had won anything. Let's go. Robert, I said. We walked to the elevator. Robert was checking his phone, already drafting the next legal motion in his head. I need a minute, I said. I'll meet you in the lobby. I turned back toward the restrooms. I needed to splash cold water on my face. I needed to wash the feeling of that room off my skin. When I came out of the restroom, Lauren was waiting in the hallway. She was leaning against the wall, checking her makeup in a compact mirror. She snapped it shut when she saw me. You know, she said, her voice conversational, almost light. I almost pulled it off. I stopped. You almost pulled off sending Mom and Dad to jail, I asked. No, she said, I almost saved them. And I almost made myself rich enough that you wouldn't be the only success story in the family. She pushed off the wall and walked toward me. You think you're so special, Alice, because you went to college, because you have a 401k, because you drive a car that doesn't break down. I worked for those things. Lauren? Yeah. Well, it must be nice, she said bitterly. It must be nice to be the one who can follow the rules and still win. Some of us aren't built like that. Some of us need a shortcut. You didn't need a shortcut, I said. You needed a job. She laughed. A harsh, barking sound. A job. You sound just like Dad. Get a job. Lauren, be like Alice. Lauren. She stepped closer. She was close enough that I could see the fine lines of stress around her eyes that her makeup couldn't hide. I did it because you always had the life I wanted, she whispered. Not the money. Really. The respect. They respect you. They fear you a little bit. I wanted that. I wanted to be the one who walked in and fixed everything with a check. I wanted to be the savior. So you stole my identity to pretend to be me, I asked. I borrowed your credibility, she corrected. And if the market hadn't crashed, I would have paid it back. I would have paid off the house, and I would have bought you a nice gift, and you never would have known. And everyone would have looked at me and said, wow, Lauren really made something of herself. She looked at me with a devastating honesty. I just wanted to be you for a little while. Alice, but without the boring parts, it was the most honest thing she had ever said to me. And it was terrifying. She didn't see me as a person. She saw me as a costume she could wear to get applause. That's not love. Lauren, I said, that's parasitism. She shrugged. Call it what you want. But you better watch your back. Alice, Mom is never going to forgive you for that scene in there. You humiliated her, and for Denise Foster. Humiliation is worse than death. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking on the tile floor, a rhythm of defiance. 2 days later, the email arrived. It wasn't from my parents. It was from a real estate agent named Becky Thorne. I knew Becky. She was a friend of my mother's from the garden club. Subject listing agreement, 429 Elm Street. Alice, your mother asked me to loop you in since your name is technically on the title now, so confusing. We are getting ready to list the house next week. Denise says they want to do a quick sale to simplify their lives. I need you to sign the attached consent form to list the property. We are pricing it aggressively for a quick cash close. Let me know, Becky. I stared at the screen. Simplify their lives. They were trying to sell the house. I called Robert immediately. They're listing the house. I said, Of course they are. Robert said, It's the smart move for them. Why, I asked. If they sell, they lose their home. If they sell. Robert explained. The proceeds of the sale go to pay off the liens. The first mortgage gets paid. Then the HELOC gets paid. The debt is satisfied. But the debt is fraudulent, I said. The bank doesn't care who pays it, as long as it gets paid, Robert said. But here's the trap. Alice, if the house sells and the HELOC is paid off from the proceeds, the account is closed. The bank closes the fraud investigation because they have been made whole. The police lose interest because there is no longer a financial loss to the lender, and I lose my evidence. I said, You lose more than that, Robert said. By signing the listing agreement and allowing the sale to pay off the debt, you are tacitly accepting that the debt is valid. You are ratifying the fraud. You are saying, Yes, use my share of the house to pay this loan. And if the house sells for less than what is owed, I asked, then you are on the hook for the deficiency, Robert said. And since you allowed the sale, you can't claim fraud later. You will have voluntarily participated in the liquidation. They are trying to bury the crime, I said. My mother's voice echoed in my head. The shame will kill me. She didn't care about the house. She cared about the investigation. If she sold the house, she could tell the neighbors they were downsizing. She could pay off the bank. She could make the detectives go away. She was willing to sell her home to protect the lie. We have to stop it. I said, We can, Robert said. But Alice, think about what this looks like. You are going to file a lis pendens. It's a legal notice that there is a lawsuit pending regarding the title of the property. It effectively freezes the property. No title company will ensure a sale while it's active, so I'm blocking them from selling. I said, Yes, Robert said. You are trapping them in the house. You are forcing them to stay in the crime scene until the police are done. They will say you are holding them hostage. I thought about the peacemaker act Lauren had pulled. I thought about my father's silence. I thought about the way they had spent my money on trips and image maintenance while I skipped dentist appointments, if they sell the house. Lauren walks away, I said. She gets away with it, and my name stays on a loan history that I never signed. Correct, Robert said. File it, I said. I spent the night pacing my apartment. I was doing the right thing legally. I knew that. But emotionally, I felt like a monster. I was the daughter suing her parents to stop them from moving. I poured a glass of wine and sat by the window. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah, my best friend. Hey, just saw your mom posted on Facebook. You okay? I felt a pit in my stomach. I opened Facebook. I hadn't blocked my mother there yet. An oversight. There was a post from Denise Foster. 2 hours ago. Please pray for our family. We are trying to downsize and move to a smaller place to manage our health issues, but we are being blocked by legal hurdles from our own children. It is heartbreaking when greed tears a family apart. We just want peace. Below it were dozens of comments. So sorry. Denise. Kids these days have no respect. Praying for you? How ungrateful. She was spinning the narrative again. She was the victim of a greedy child who wouldn't let her move. She didn't mention the forgery. She didn't mention the theft. She just mentioned the hurdles. I looked at the comments. These were people I had known my whole life. My Sunday school teacher, the neighbor who used to bake us cookies. They all believed her. I realized then that I couldn't win the public relations war. My mother had 40 years of community goodwill banked up. I was just the daughter who moved away. I closed the app. I didn't reply to the post. I didn't comment. I opened my email and sent a message to Robert. Make sure the lis pendens is filed first thing tomorrow morning, and send a copy to Becky Thorne so she knows the listing is dead. I took a sip of wine. They wanted to sell the house to hide the truth. I was going to keep the house to expose it. It was a strange, twisted form of protection. I was saving their home, but only so it could serve as the evidence locker for their destruction. I went to bed, but I didn't sleep. I dreamed of the house. I dreamed I was walking through the rooms, but the walls were made of paper, and everywhere I looked, I saw my signature, forged over and over again on the wallpaper, locking me in. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, a windowless box of blonde wood and fluorescent light that smelled faintly of floor wax and stale anxiety. It wasn't a criminal trial, not yet. This was an emergency civil hearing regarding the motion to expunge the lis pendens, in plain English. My parents were asking a judge to strip my legal claim from their property title so they could sell the house, pay off the fraud, and bury the evidence. I sat at the plaintiff's table next to Robert Miller. My hands were folded in my lap, gripping my fingers so tight the knuckles were white. Across the aisle, my family sat like a portrait of a grieved virtue. My father, Mark, stared at his shoes. My mother, Denise, wore a black dress that suggested she was attending a funeral for her own reputation, and Lauren sat between them, upright, poised, clutching a notebook as if she were merely an observer to a misunderstanding she intended to clear up. Their lawyer, a man named Mr. Garris, who had represented my father in a zoning dispute 10 years ago, stood up. "Your Honor," Garris began, his voice booming with forced confidence. "This case is a tragic example of a family dispute spiraling out of control. The defendants, Mark and Denise Foster, are elderly homeowners attempting to downsize. Their daughter, the plaintiff, has filed a malicious lien on their property based on a misunderstanding regarding a family loan. We are asking the court to remove this impediment so my clients can sell their home and move on with their lives." The judge, a woman named Judge Vance with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose, looked over her paperwork. "She alleges fraud." "Mr. Garris," Judge Vance said, "she alleges she never signed the mortgage you are trying to pay off." "Mr. Garris waved a hand dismissively. "A technicality, Your Honor. The plaintiff was aware of the loan. She verbally authorized it. Now that relationships have soured, she is using the legal system to hold her parents hostage in a home they can no longer afford." Judge Vance turned to Robert. "Mr. Miller." Robert stood up. He didn't wave his hands. He didn't boom. He simply opened the binder. "Your Honor," he said, "we are not alleging a misunderstanding. We are alleging grand larceny and identity theft. If this house is sold, the primary evidence of that theft, the equity that was stripped from the home, will be liquidated and dispersed. We are asking the court to maintain the status quo until the fraud investigation by Apex Mortgage and the local police is concluded." He picked up a document. "Exhibit A," Robert said. "The timeline." I watched as the clerk took the paper to the judge. "On June 12th, Robert continued, "a home equity line of credit was opened in my client's name. On that day, my client was in Chicago. We have submitted hotel receipts and flight logs." He picked up another document, Exhibit B, the contact information. The application lists an email address, Alice Foster Investments, and a phone number ending in 199. My client has never owned this domain. She has never possessed this phone number. However, subpoenaed records from the service provider text now show the number was registered to a credit card owned by the defendant, Lauren Foster. I looked at Lauren. She didn't flinch. She was staring straight ahead, her jaw set in a hard line. Robert continued, his rhythm relentless. Exhibit C, the notary log. The signature on the power of attorney used to authorize this loan has been flagged by a forensic examiner as a simulation. Mr. Garris jumped up. Objection. That is a preliminary opinion, not a fact. Judge Vance held up a hand. Overruled. I will weigh it accordingly. Proceed. Robert turned a page. And finally, Your Honor, Exhibit D, a series of screenshots from a group chat titled Boss Babes, provided by a witness. In these messages, dated 3 days before the loan closed, Lauren Foster writes, and I quote, Alice won't actually do anything because she needs approval. I will handle the signing. She is a doormat. The air in the room seemed to vanish. My mother gasped. It was a sharp, audible intake of breath. She turned to look at Lauren. Lauren's composure cracked, just for a second. Her face flushed a deep, blotchy red. Judge Vance looked at the screenshot. She looked at Lauren. Then she looked back at Robert. "Is there evidence of where the funds went?" the judge asked. "Yes, Your Honor," Robert said. He produced the bank transfer records. $65,000 was transferred to L Squared Management, a sole proprietorship owned by Lauren Foster. The remaining funds were withdrawn in cash or used to pay credit cards also in Lauren Foster's name. Alice Foster received $0, not 1 cent. Robert sat down. The silence that followed was heavy. It wasn't the silence of confusion. It was the silence of truth settling like dust. "Mr. Garris tried to rally. Your Honor," he said weakly, "families share funds. It is not uncommon for—" Judge Vance cut him off. "I would like to hear from the mother," the judge said. "Mrs. Foster, please take the stand." My mother stood up. She looked shaky. She walked to the witness box, her hand trembling as she swore to tell the truth. "Mrs. Foster," the judge asked, leaning forward, "did your daughter Alice agree to this loan?" My mother looked at me. Her eyes were wide, filled with a terrifying mixture of anger and pleading. She wanted me to stop this. She wanted me to jump up and say, "It's okay, Mom, I forgive you," but I sat still. I was a statue. My mother looked at Lauren. Lauren was biting her thumbnail, her eyes darting around the room. "Mrs. Foster," the judge prompted. "She didn't sign the paper." My mother whispered. "That wasn't the question." The judge said sharply, "Did she agree to the debt? Did she tell you?" "Yes. Take out $80,000 in my name." My mother gripped the railing of the witness box. "We needed the money," she said, her voice rising. "Mark's surgery. The roof." "Mrs. Foster," the judge said. "Yes or no?" My mother looked down at her hands. "No," she said softly. A murmur ran through the courtroom, but she would have my mother added quickly, looking up with desperate eyes. If we had asked her the right way, she would have Alice always helps. She's the responsible one. Robert Miller stood up. "Mrs. Foster?" he asked. "Why didn't you ask her?" "Because she would have wanted to control it," my mother blurted out. "She would have wanted to see the bills. She would have lectured us about budgeting. She makes us feel small." She pointed a shaking finger at me. "It's humiliating to ask your child for money," she said, tears streaming down her face. "It's humiliating to admit you failed. Lauren made it easy. She said she would handle it. She said we didn't have to beg Alice. She said, 'Let's just get it done, and we can pay it back before she notices.' So you stole from her because it was easier than dealing with her questions," Robert asked. "We didn't steal," my mother sobbed. "We borrowed. We are family." "You sacrificed her credit to save your pride," Robert said. My mother crumbled. She put her face in her hands and wept. I realized then that she didn't see me as a person. She saw me as a resource, a bank account with a personality that she found inconvenient. She loved the money, but she hated the accountability that came with it. So she chose the daughter who gave her the fantasy Lauren, who promised the moon and delivered nothing but debt. My father was next. He didn't take the stand. The judge asked him a question from his seat. "Mr. Foster," the judge said, "you are the primary borrower. Do you have anything to add?" My father stood up. He looked at me. "I'm sorry." "Alice," he said. It was quiet, specific, late. I didn't know about the email. He said, his voice raspy, "I didn't know about the burner phone. But I knew you weren't there." He took a deep breath. "I knew you hadn't signed it." He admitted. "But Lauren brought the papers, and she looked so happy. She said, 'Dad, I fixed it,' and for the first time in years, there was peace in the house. Your mother wasn't crying about bills. Lauren wasn't fighting with us. It was quiet." He wiped his eyes. "I chose the peace," he said. "I chose the peace over doing right by you. And I am ashamed." I felt a tear slide down my cheek. I brushed it away. His apology was real. I believed that, but it changed nothing. He had traded my financial future for a few months of quiet evenings. He had sold me out for comfort. Then, it was Lauren's turn. She didn't wait to be called. She stood up. Her face twisted with a sudden, vicious energy. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "Everyone is acting like Alice is some victim. She wanted this Mr. Garris tried to shush her. "Lauren, sit down." "No," Lauren shouted. She pointed at me. "You wanted control, Alice. You loved that we needed you. You loved writing those checks every month. You probably knew about the loan the whole time and just let it ride so you could swoop in and save the day later. You have a savior complex." Judge Vance banged her gavel. "Ms. Foster, sit down." "She benefited from it," Lauren yelled, ignoring the judge. "She got to be the superior one. She got to look down on us. That is a benefit." Robert Miller looked at the judge. "Your Honor," he said calmly, "psychological gratification is not a currency recognized by the bank. The facts are simple. Alice Foster is $84,000 in debt for a house she does not own, for money she never spent." The judge nodded. She had heard enough. She adjusted her glasses and looked at the parents. "This court finds that the plaintiff has established a probable validity to her claim of fraud." Judge Vance said, "The evidence regarding the forged signature and the misappropriation of funds is compelling." She looked at Mr. Garris. "The motion to expunge the lis pendens is denied. The notice of pending litigation will remain on the title. You may not sell, refinance, or transfer this property until the underlying fraud investigation is resolved." She turned to Robert. "I am also issuing a temporary protective order preventing the defendants from contacting the plaintiff regarding financial matters." She looked at me. "Ms. Foster," she said, "I cannot vacate the debt today. That requires a full trial or a completion of the bank's investigation, but I can ensure that the evidence remains intact. The house stays frozen. Court is adjourned." She banged the gavel. It wasn't a cinematic victory. There were no handcuffs. There was no confetti. I was still legally liable for the debt until the bank finished their work, but the bleeding had stopped. The house was locked down. They couldn't hide the crime by selling the scene. I stood up. My legs felt shaky. "We did it," Robert said quietly. "This is the leverage we needed. Now the bank has to deal with us." I nodded. "Thank you." "Robert." I turned to leave. The aisle was narrow. I had to walk past them. My parents were sitting frozen, looking at the floor. They looked like statues of defeat, but Lauren was standing. She stepped into my path as I reached the gate. Robert moved to intercept, but I held up a hand. Lauren looked at me. The rage was gone, replaced by a chilling, flat calm. "You think you won?" she whispered. I didn't answer. "You froze the house," she said. "Great. Now Mom and Dad are trapped in a place they can't afford. They're going to run out of money in 3 months. And when they do, when the lights get cut off, everyone is going to know it was you who did it." She smiled. A small, tight expression. "I might lose the money, Alice, but you lost the story. You will always be the daughter who sued her parents, and I will always be the one who stayed and tried to help. You can't sue your way out of being the villain." I looked at her. I looked at the sister I had protected on the playground, the sister I had bought prom dresses for, the sister I had paid $20,000 to support. I saw her clearly for the first time. She wasn't broken. She was empty. She was a void that consumed everything around her to fill herself up. The story isn't over. "Lauren," I said. I stepped around her. I walked out of the courtroom, down the long marble hallway, and into the bright, blinding sunlight of the afternoon. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a notification from the Apex Mortgage portal. Status update. Fraud investigation active. Estimated completion 90 to 120 days. 90 days, maybe more. It would be a long winter. There would be more motions, more letters, more guilt. But as I stood on the courthouse steps, taking a deep breath of the city air, I realized something. I wasn't paying for them anymore. I wasn't paying their mortgage. I wasn't paying for Lauren's delusions. And most importantly, I wasn't paying the emotional tax of trying to buy their love. I checked the time. It was 2 o'clock. I had a conference call with a supplier in Tokyo in an hour. I put my phone in my pocket. I walked toward my car. I was $84,000 in debt, and I was an orphan in every way that mattered. But for the first time in my life, the balance sheet was honest, and that was a start. Thank you so much for listening to this story of betrayal, boundaries, and the high cost of the truth. It was a difficult journey for Alice, but one she had to take to reclaim her life. I would love to hear your thoughts on Alice's decision. Did she do the right thing by taking her family to court, or was the price too high? And I am curious, where are you listening from today? Please let me know in the comments section below. I love seeing how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this series and want to hear more realistic, gripping dramas, please make sure to subscribe to the Revenge Stories channel. Your support helps me continue writing. Until next time, take care of yourselves. And remember, sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the ones with the people we love the most.